This is World Pass here with another review video. I say a while, but it has been a minute since I've done a review video. So I'm going to be reviewing Neon Genesis Evangelion, the anime series, right now. Now before I get any further, I am just going to do a disclaimer. Everything in this review is going to be spoiler heavy. This series, it's taken me forever to just, go back and watch older anime series, so hopefully y'all don't mind that I'm going to involve heavy spoilers for Neon Genesis Evangelion, the anime. The story is made for mature audiences with concepts of depression, anxiety, nudity, and gore, so if you do watch it, be aware of that, because I would hate to recommend an anime and y'all get triggered by it. So hopefully y'all keep that in mind. I just want to talk about it because there's a lot to talk about, and I'm gonna try to keep this as short as possible, but still get my thoughts out on it. The atmosphere from Neon Genesis Evangelion is apparent from the start of the anime. There's soundtrack, but only in splotched places, when you can hear the cicadas in the background, or you can hear all the machinery clanking around in the background of the nerve headquarters. It's just stuff like that where you can put soundtrack to set the mood, where the lack of soundtrack actually impacts a little bit more. It's like, for me, it engages me a little bit more. I focus more on the dialogue, and it just, it fits with the tone of the anime. Actually, there's a whole bunch of environmental sound effects, a whole bunch of emphasis on the atmosphere, and that's one of the things I really appreciated about it. The characters definitely pop. They're definitely some of the highlights of Neon Genesis Evangelion, and they're all full of personality. You can tell. You can even see some of the lack of enthusiasm in the main character Shinji's face from the beginning, until he gets caught up in this whole mess. But I really just appreciated how vibrant and different these characters were, especially with the story as gloomy as it is, as dark as it is. Halfway through the series, things for me start to align, because throughout the first half, even the second half, we're gonna talk about it. It just feels like, okay, they threw me into the world expecting me to just know everything, and I think that kind of helps me engage a little more with it, because I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going on. They're throwing out these huge terms, they're throwing out different things that have happened in the world, like the second impact. They're talking about Evangelions, I know what Evas are. Sorry, not Evangelions, but angels, Evas, and I'm like, bro, hold on, I'm trying to piece these things together, and I think it works for me because I'm an anime fan. If you're a first time anime watcher, this would be a terrible anime to start you with, I'm not gonna lie, because you're just gonna feel lost. But knowing me, knowing how the formula for anime goes, this is a really nice, unique way to throw you into a story. It's here, this is literally its own world on its own. We're not gonna tell you anything about it, and you kind of have to figure out everything along the way. The history between these different characters, the relationships between them. You got to piece together every single thing yourself, and I actually really enjoy that, because it's different. It's not hand holding you across the story and telling you, oh, here, this, don't forget that I told you this. It's a different way to approach a story, and I really appreciated that about Evangelion. Just as you continue to watch it and you get deeper into the story, you realize that the world of Evangelion is a lot darker and deeper than what it portrayed in the first few episodes. And it's actually a little bit depressing, because you're like, damn, it's just every episode gets worse with things you find out about certain characters, how things have ended up between certain characters, and just the lore behind the world of Evangelion is it's crazy. And it's interesting enough from the get-go, but it just, the mood kind of shifts, and you see it, and it kind of becomes what it is by the end of it, the series. How the dialogue is composed and exchanged between characters, information is introduced with a lot of vagueness. Like I was saying before, we kind of have to piece it together. They're not telling us anything straightforward. They're kind of expecting us to know already which is like, you would think that wouldn't work, but for me it worked. I was like, okay, so this is that. Am I right about this? It just, again, we have to piece the story together ourselves. And it forces us to pay attention. And of course, the fighting in the Evas are one of the highlights. Shout out to all the animators who worked on this series, because damn, those Evas are clean. They're cleanly animated and detailed, and I can't imagine just having to animate the fights for those things every time Shinji would get in an Eva. Asuka would get in an Eva. All the children, Rei, like every time. I could just imagine every time they were like, all right, let's have another Eva fight. All the animators were just like, oh, not again, bro. Like, y'all, they really did amazing work. Everything was so fluid. The Eva fights were so fluid, it looked like humans were fighting. Like, that's really solid. And I don't know if it's not really meant to differentiate, human from machine, because if you look in, obviously if you watch the anime, those aren't machines. Those are technically angels that Shinji and them are piloting. So I just really liked how fluid all the animation was, of course, with all the fights. It's gorgeous, amazing. Of course, the soundtrack never lacks. I said they wouldn't overuse soundtrack in certain parts of the story, but when it came to the fights, when it came to important moments, the soundtrack pops off. When the Evas are fighting, I just felt like hype. It came in with this doom 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 every time there was an Eva fight, and it like made me feel like, and then oh, my mind's all over the place. But you hear the trumpets, dun, 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 dun. It just made you like feel like, I don't know, hype. For me, it was like hype. It was like, oh, stuff's about to pop down. It gave me like a sort of military vibe, and I think that was intentional. But I'm a big fan of good soundtracks, and Evangelion has a really good soundtrack. I was a little lost at the start of it because it was an episode to episode basis. For the first half, every episode is different, has its own scenario, its own unique, kind of like a SpongeBob episode. I hate to compare it to that, but there's no continuity until the very, very end of the story. End of the series, but if you go to the middle starts to like close the gap a little bit. Some episodes start to intertwine, and I was just like, yo, okay, things are starting to pick up, things are starting to like, and you got to give it that chance. Otherwise, if you give up on it in the first like 8 episodes, you're missing out on a very, very good story where the characters start to deal with their own emotions and interactions with others, and that's where things get really, really interesting. The highlight of the story was just the character dilemmas. We get a dive into each character's mental state, and how they deal with their own problems, and how they go along, or how they fit into this post-apocalyptic storyline. The series is fun and quirky, like I said from the beginning, but it changes really, really fast and refuses to leave us in the dark from the secrets of the world. A very, very depressing world. So shout out to the creator, Hideki Anno. Well, name of the creator, right? But man, I read after watching the series that he was really battling depression, not like just once, but like multiple times during the creation of this series, and you can see it in the tone of the story, and in how everything shifts, and in some of the endings, which I'll talk about later. So I really shout out to him for battling and expressing it through his art. Like, that's what art is for, I feel like, and just for us to watch the journey that he's been on is incredible. So shout out to Anno for real. So the original ending was so confusing to me. I really had to watch multiple analytical videos on YouTube to be like, yo, what did I just watch? And it kind of made sense to me a little bit, but I still didn't. It was still unsettling to me. It felt like a completely different ending to like something else, because the way the series was built up, how I said it got like a lot sadder, it just shifted and it became like something else. The whole instrumentality project thing, and then blending in the live action and different art styles, I was just like, what is going on? And yeah, I did read that there were production issues, but also the meaning behind Anno's original ending, and I don't know that I liked it. I just, everybody there clapping, applauding Shinji for finally coming around, but I was like, bro, Shinji didn't do a damn thing. He just been crying the whole damn series. Oh, and it just felt out of place. It felt out of place. I'm not saying I wanted everybody to die or everything to be like, you know, but like I needed some continuity, something to mesh, and that ending felt really, really out of place for me. By that point, I feel like I was very, very irritated at the characters. After the halfway point, you, like I said, you dive into their mental states, and each one is just trapped in this cycle of making the worst decisions for themselves. And it's so annoying because, you know, you like these characters and then you just see them relapse into a lot of their trauma, like a lot of trauma that they can't, you know, really deal with. And to me, it was irritating only because I can't really relate to that, any of those mental states. I can't really relate to, you know, being trapped or being in despair, or, you know, just completely struggling to break out of cycles that are hurting you at the end of the day. So seeing characters like Asuka continue to like, oh, you know, I'm so lonely because of my parents, I just want to like make them proud. Seeing Shinji crawl up and freaking freeze up in super traumatic events, and it's not fair that as a watcher I'm like, yo, get up and go do something, go fight, you know, as he lets Asuka get torn to shreds by all those angels. But at the same time, like, I look at it in a different way now, because I'm like, yo, these are just kids. They're also going through their own traumas while fighting in a post-apocalyptic world where more traumatic events are happening to them. So I can't really be too mad at it now that I think of it. But like at the moment, I was very irritated at them, at Misato too, for getting back with her ex Kanji. You know, I did not mess with the dude because I saw how he was acting, and I was like, oh, okay, this is why Misato broke up with him, and now she back, you know, sleeping with him. And I'm like, bro, just none of these characters can deal with their past, or they stay stuck in the past, and maybe that's part of it. Even the one professor, the lady with the blonde hair, she had mom issues, and she still fell into the same trauma, the same mistakes that her mom made. It was just a lot. It was just a lot to handle. Ano threw us in a pit of just, here's a lot of trauma, and watch this complete, like, chaotic mess. I don't even know how to explain it. I was irritated because I'm like, they're not making the right decisions for themselves, and they keep, you know, falling into this loop. And then I, like, after I watched enough, after I went and researched, I was like, yo, this is probably what depression is like. Just the constant battle, you know. Granted, these characters all have different issues, but like the main like theme for Ano, somebody who struggled with depression, is that it's hard to get out of it. It's hard to do the right things for yourself when you don't have the energy, when you have so much trauma, when there's just a lot that goes into it that I didn't understand, and that he showed me throughout the series. And, you know, to me, it's an 8, which it would have bumped up more if the ending was a little bit different, if it at least meshed well with the series, but it felt too out of place for me. And I know the ending was a result of real world problems, and, you know, served as an outlet for Ano, for all the emotions he was holding, carrying, and going through while he made this. So to me, Evangelion is going to be an 8. The series does have a sequel movies that serve to completely reintroduce the story, and trust, I watched all of them. End of Evangelion, and then the Rebuild movies. I'm so glad I did that. I suggest y'all do the same if you decide to pick this anime up. But, you know, I really, really enjoyed Evangelion, Neon Genesis Evangelion, and it's a vibe. The art style is awesome, vintage anime, soundtrack is good, the action is awesome, and, you know, it's just very, very unique, and I'm very, very glad I watched it. They just take a little bit to edit, so hopefully y'all are eating enough throughout the day, drinking enough water, getting enough rest, taking care of your personal hygiene, because we cannot be the best version of ourselves and spread our positive energy throughout the world without first taking care of ourselves. This has been World Paz, and I'm a peace out.